Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Blue Tinted Glasses. Today, I am buzzing to say I'm joined by the Athletics Leicester City reporter Rob Tanner. Again, I think it's his fourth time on the channel. Rob, mate, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy period, hasn't it, with the transfer window and the inquest into the helicopter crash, and
Yeah.
just feels like the last couple of days everything's calming down a little bit more now.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you like having a bit of a break after the transfer window? But there's not been that much to do. Obviously, I know you've been busy with other stuff, like you said, the inquest and things like that. But there's not been much activity at this window.
No, but it wasn't right. It wasn't until right up until the last few days that we realised that actually they weren't going to do anything, because every time we asked Ruud, he would say, "Yeah, we're trying, we're working hard, we're looking at possibilities." He said there was some money available. As the window went on, that was getting a little bit less positive, and then obviously in the last few days, everybody realised that unless something absolutely unbelievable landed in their lap, they wouldn't be able to do anything else. Which I think leaves them a little bit short now for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, well, let's touch on that. I read your article again yesterday as well, and there's something in there that I think a lot of Leicester fans are talking about at the moment, and it's about what Ruud was saying when he first joined the football club, which was that apparently the what would take place in January was a big part of negotiations and all of that. I think he said that he spoke a lot in London, was it? I think before he was appointed. From what has been said previously by Ruud himself, it gave Leicester fans the impression early on that the club were going to back him in January. Is that the impression that you got as well, or has that been misconstrued by Leicester City fans?
No, he said it, and the concerning thing is that he's the third manager now that I can remember that's said something similar. You know, that they were told they could do something, and then they're told at the last minute they can't. Brendan was the first one in the summer before the 22-23 season, when he was saying that he had players literally lined up in the training ground ready to sign, and he was told at the end that they couldn't. And then I think Enzo was very disappointed last January when he wasn't able to sign anybody. They did try and bring Sensei in for him, but that didn't work. And then obviously now Ruud has been saying consistently that they're going to try and back him, but it's not materialised again for very similar reasons. And now we're only ever here because the managers are the only people that speak at Leicester City publicly, so you only ever hear their side of it. But that's up to the club. I think they should come out and explain these issues a little bit more than they do. Well, a lot more than they do, because they don't at all. And I think that would certainly appease some frustrated fans.
Totally, mate. Totally. And, transparency, which you kind of alluded to a little bit there, it's a big problem at the moment. The club are getting a lot of criticism about it. And I know a tweet or a reply that you made on X a couple of weeks ago blew up a little bit, where you mentioned that the club haven't spoken to yourself, the top of the club haven't spoken to yourself or others since 2016. Why is that? Is that because a lot is said about the culture, the Thai culture? It can be quite, I'll say secretive. Why is it that they will not talk to yourself and other journalists publicly?
Well, I think they've just got themselves into this trend. The last time was we sat down with Top in the boardroom after they won the title. So that was a moment to sort of celebrate and reflect with him. He spoke very well, and we thought that went well. Perhaps we're going to get a few more opportunities down the line, because Vichai never did interviews either. And I do think it's a little bit part of that Thai culture. I mean, they don't have the forensic media that we have over here, asking questions all the time. So yeah, that was a little. But also, John Rookin, director of football, Susan Whelan, CEO, they don't speak publicly really. I think I've only ever heard Susan stand up at the end of season dinner and say a few words on behalf of Kuvichai and then Kuhn Top. So I think it would go a long way to helping the situation. But their motto has been, well, we didn't speak when we were doing well, so we don't feel the need to speak when they're not going so well. But I actually totally disagree with that sentiment. I think when things aren't going well, that's when you need to explain what's gone wrong, instead of letting it fester. So but that's their decision.
Yeah, I mean, you said letting it fester. I mean, that is what is happening because of the lack of transparency. There is so much criticism going towards him, and I you know, I want to. I'm not here to talk about John Rudkin too much, but I think initially all of the criticism and sometimes hate went towards, you know, just Rudkin on his own, but that is now starting to go further now towards Top himself. And I think the reason for that is because, you know, it's been more than 2 years, you'd say, that people have been calling out John Rudkin. And if he isn't to blame, if there is no, if it is kind of unfair criticism towards him, why hasn't there been anything, I don't know what people want exactly, statement or interview. I don't know what it is exactly people want, but there is nothing telling us, well, it's not actually him. It's, you know, there's no problems coming from his side, but because there is such a lack of transparency now, people have just had enough. And, you know, as you're aware, there are protests planned, whether how successful or how many people show up to that, I don't know. But before the Arsenal game, it's not looking good, is it, Rob? I mean, it is spiraling out of control, and it feels now 10 times worse, in my opinion, than the 22-23 relegation, because although that was a big shock and the most expensive squad to go down, now it feels like, well, the same mistakes are being made.
Well, this is the thing, sir. And I'm never said that John Rudkin doesn't deserve some sort of criticism or critique of his performance. We all do in a professional environment. But if you know anything about how a football club works, it isn't just one person. There are multiple people involved. And when I wrote an article after the Fulham game, I said in there that Top really needs some help. The reason being, they used to have a model where Kung Vichai was at the top of the tree and he would overlook everything, the King Power Empire and Leicester City. And he was obviously very interested in Leicester City. Then Top would spend quite a bit of time around the club and he would be his conduit to Vichai. And he would work very closely with John Rudkin, and Susan Whelan was also involved in some forms of football matters as well. I mean, she negotiated the Harry Maguire deal because she had a good relationship with Ed Woodward, so they struck that deal. Since Vichai's death, Kuntop stepped up. He was 33 when he stepped up, and suddenly he's got to look after the family. He's the youngest of the four, but he's got to look after the family. He's got to look after the King Power Empire during a pandemic, a global pandemic, and the football club. And so you've taken away one tier, one level of management. So now, from what I understand, Susan doesn't get involved so much in the football side of it. She's very much focused on the business side of it, which doesn't do too badly. He's doing well. But on the football side, you know, the decisions are taken. They are Top makes the big decisions. And I think John delegates a lot of those decisions, but it's just the two of them working together. And I just think they need a little bit more help in there, perhaps another opinion, another perspective on the situation. I mean, we know that the last 3 years have been particularly difficult for the club financially with PSR. I mean, this all started in the 22-23 season, going back to what I said about Brendan. Thought he could bring in 3 or 4 players. Unfortunately, could not. And that was when, you know, that it started to spiral a little bit, although I still think that there was no way that squad should ever have been relegated. But, you know, I think it's been over time, it's been the award of big contracts, paying players. Recruitment's not been great, paying those players big wages, big contracts. And that's pushed them to the PSR threshold. And then when you start losing money that you think you were going to win through, you know, finishing high up in the table, qualifying for Europe, etc., then that really does put you in an awkward position. And they have tried to back. And again, the decisions to keep changing manager have not helped the situation. So you've had, obviously, Brendan's gone, and then you brought in Dean for the rest of the season. Okay, different philosophy to Brendan, didn't quite work. Then Enzo comes in, completely different philosophy. He gets a window, brings in the players he wants before he leaves. As well, he gets players that he thinks should be rewarded for their performances, like Yannick Vestergaard, new contracts. But then he leaves. Cooper comes in, completely different again, in terms of his personality and approach. And you know, the players don't warm to him. He gets a window. They spend 50 million net which is one of the biggest net spends in a transfer window the club's ever had. But then he's gone after 12 games, and Ruud van Nistelrooy's come in, and he's not fancying some of these players that have been brought for big money. Caleb Okoli, Oliver Skip, and Facundo Buonanotto's only started 3 games under Ruud as well, and he's taken up one of the loans. Odson Edouard not been in a matchday squad, I don't think, under Ruud. I mean, he's only played 26 minutes in total. I mean, that was a terrible deal, and that's 2 of your loans that you could have used in the window, 2 of your Premier League loan slots. So I think it's just been a muddled process over the last 3 years in terms of what is this club's identity? What is it? What sort of coach do we want? What sort of football do we want to see? And it's been almost like jumping from one to the other in almost desperation stakes. And I think they just need to get back to having a clear identity of who Leicester City are, how they're going to operate, what markets they're going to work in, and try and push on from there.
Just quickly, Rob, because I think the last time so there was a bit of news that came out, I think the day after we spoke last, so I couldn't ask you about it, but I don't think it was from yourself. I think it may have been from Percy potentially, but there was something said about how Top was never keen on Steve Cooper from the start as to appoint him. If that was true, what does that suggest? That maybe Rudkin or made the decision and Top backed him there, and then obviously he regretted it. What do you know about that?
Top always makes the big decisions. He'll take advice from John though, and he's very, very close to John.
Yeah,
but he will. I mean, from my understanding of that situation was they wanted Graham Potter. Graham Potter was hesitant. Time was ticking on. They were getting into planning for the new season. They didn't have a manager in place. They'd interviewed Steve Cooper twice. He had actually impressed them with a PowerPoint presentation, research into his career to date, with stats and that showing him where he's excelled, what he does well. So they ran out of patience waiting for Graham Potter, effectively, and got in Steve Cooper, and it just didn't work. It just didn't gel. Perhaps clashes of personalities behind the scenes a little bit. Certainly the players, after the structure of Enzo, everything was laid out for them, planned to perfection. If you're in this part of the pitch at this moment, you pass here. If that one's not on there, then here's pass B, sort of thing. And then you've got Steve coming in, by the way, who didn't like to be called boss or gaffer or anything like it. It was Coops or Steve. And he would say to them, when you get into that, here's our structure. And when you get into that final third, go and express yourself. Go do what you feel you want to do at that moment, which is completely different to Enzo. And I think some of the players were a little bit reticent to that. I mean, obviously, we saw the Christmas party in Denmark. That did not.
It looks even worse now, by the way. It looks even worse.
Yeah. I mean, they are a strong bunch of individuals. Well, there certainly is a few strong individuals in the dressing room, but I don't think for any second they are disruptive. They just need managing. They just need to be inspired. And it's a shame the results have gone the way they have for Ruud, because right now, Ruud, when you talk to people around some of the players, they're enjoying it under Ruud. He's authoritative, and certainly he told them after the Fulham game, a few home truths, which you would expect every manager to do. You want a manager to lead. So he's not lost the dressing room, has he? Because there are some suggestions about that already. No, I don't think he's lost the dressing room at all, because he's a very amiable, decent man. He's got a bit of an aura around him.
Yeah.
And I remember people at Man United telling me this when he came, and I was trying to find out, what sort of coach he was. And they were saying, very popular with the players. I think you can remember when they beat Leicester and Casemiro come running over to the bench to celebrate with Ruud. There was a connection there. There was a mutual respect. And I think Ruud's trying to treat all the players as human beings first, and footballers second at the moment, and trying to just make them feel a little bit more comfortable in this scenario, because it's obviously a very difficult period for all of them. The fans are giving them stick in when there's been poor performances, and there's been quite a few. I mean, Brentford was pretty bad, but that was the worst one I've seen at Everton at the weekend. So this is going to be a massive test of his man management skills to try and get these lads all on one page and pull in the right direction, especially without any help in the transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, fast forwarding now, obviously back to the transfer window that's just closed. I mean, Is it as simple, Rob, as just PSR? Because has
No.
PSR hamstrung us a little bit with what we can do? Because even past that, I mean, I look, for example, at Burnley. They brought in Marcus Edwards from Sporting, a right winger, English, who's not a world beater, not going to tear up the Premier League, but he's a very good right-sided player. And you would argue, although it probably wasn't the priority, he would be much needed in this squad with Abdul Fattah injured. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 6-month loan for a £1 million loan fee. I mean, just not that specifically, but just deals like that are available. And why were there no movement from the club?
Well, that one in particular, they didn't want to go and get people in who were not going to be able to make an impact on the starting 11. That was what I was told repeatedly. I mean, that they could have just brought bodies in. They could have given them contracts, but then they would be stuck with them. And if they didn't work out, that's going to add to their problems. They needed people that were going to come in and make an impact. Who they were, it was very, very difficult to find anybody that was going to come in. January is always a window for the desperate. I know Villa have done an amazing amount of business in this January window, but Liverpool haven't. It's the clubs that really need to do business, like Leicester, that tend to go in there. And the problem is, everybody knows you need to do business. So all the prices go up, all the asking prices and wages go up as well. Players want longer contracts to come and sign because they can smell a little bit of the desperation. Yeah. So, but the problem is not just PSR. The problem is that when they have had opportunities to spend, like the last summer window, they haven't spent it wisely. They again, the recruitment, how the recruitment works is the manager always has the final say. So those were Cooper's players coming in. The recruitment team will have done their work and said, right, here's option A, B, and C for your central midfield player. Which one do you want us to go for? But then ultimately, it was Cooper's final decision on those. And I said Odsonne Edouard, he wanted a striker in, and I think there was a bit of a panic at the last minute to get him on loan for the rest of the season. But I just think the business hasn't been good enough in that window, that not many of those players are impacting on the starting 11. It's the same players. It's pretty much the same back four that went down 2 years ago. So that is the big concern, that they have had money under PSR, but they haven't spent it, in my opinion, wisely enough.
Just a couple more things. Sorry, the last thing on PSR and all of that and spending is, I'm sure you saw it, the Kieran Maguire post yesterday, I think, where Leicester are the 20th in transfer spend since 2020. Where's the money going? Is it wages? Is that why? Is how much we're paying in wages causing, leading basically to PSR issues where we're not able to spend as much on transfer? Is that all it is, or is it?
Well, yeah, it's how much. Yeah, it's how much they're spending, how much they're committed to spending, the budget. It's exceedingly high compared to their revenue. So that's the issue, and a lot of that is not so much the transfer fees. It's all the signing ons, the bonuses, the wages, and the length of the. I mean, obviously they're back in the Premier League now, so the lads that took a relegation clause deduction have now had that put back on. So you're getting back to those sort of levels of spending. So they were obviously competing fifth, and eighth. So they targeted top eight. So they wanted a top eight budget. Unfortunately, that season 22-23 caught them out massively. And obviously the revenues have not been growing because they've still been recovering from COVID. I mean, if all the plans for the back of the stadium up Raw Dykes Road, up to Helston Road, all that, I mean, that would have been incredible. I mean, I was looking at Everton's new ground and talking to some of their people at the weekend, and they're saying their revenue is going to really be boosted by that big stadium. Not just the tickets that they're going to sell, the extra tickets they're going to sell, but all the stuff they've got going on around the ground that's going to help. But that would have worked with Leicester every day of the week, all year round, because obviously there's hospitality in there, there's retail, there's the indoor arena, the car parks, and all that revenue would have massively boosted Leicester going forward. COVID comes along, all the costings that they did for that went through the roof because of the materials globally. The materials suddenly were very, very expensive, and so that's had to be parked for a little bit, and hopefully when they re-establish themselves in the Premier League at some point, they can revisit that, because I think that would be a game changer for them.
Yeah, there's definitely a worry, Rob, that's a good few years away now, I think, isn't it? I mean, especially with relegation. We'll have to see.
I think it's important to stress, though, that there isn't a crisis of money at the club. It's not like they're short of money. They've got loads of money. I mean, Top's just transferred another loan into shares. So there's over 400 million that he's converted into shares of loans. He would put more money in if he could, but they just can't without breaching. But the regulations are curtailing because of the contracts they've signed as well. It's not all about the regulations; it's the contracts they've offered of really hampering them.
This is another thing, though, Rob. Transparent. You know what I mean? If fans, because I know what you're saying is true, but there are fans out there that don't, and they think, there are conspiracy theories. Oh, he wants to sell. Oh, he's not committing, to the club anymore. But if they came out and explained this, I mean, I know it's, kind of cynical, but you saw what Bristol City did, right, the other day on deadline day, where they came out and explained the reason why they weren't able to sign players. And I just feel like if there was a bit more transparency, then of course some fans would still be angry, but there would be a little bit more understanding, and at least people would know the situation that the club are in. Because again, some people who are misinformed think we're skint, and it's just not true. We're not skint. We just can't spend.
That's it, exactly. But I think even if a Susan or a John Rudkin or even a Top came out and issued a statement, there'd still be some fans that wouldn't read it or listen to it, or they've made their minds up. But that's inevitable. That's life, isn't it? That's the modern world.
The last thing I want to ask you, Rob, and it is, look, from the start of the window, I mean, I think it was John Percy originally who did something in an article saying that Leicester's priority this window were cheap fullbacks. And then towards the end of the window, there were articles that were going out and bits of information that were being put out by the press about, Leicester unlikely to do much movement. For me and many others, it felt like that was information that was being leaked by the club, or being fed to journalists by the club to try and set fan expectations. I mean, that's how it seemed to me. But what can you tell us about that?
Well, we do talk to people, obviously, around the club. We're down there at least twice a week, every week. Some managers like to do little off-record bits, where obviously not for quoting, but they sort of mark your card on what they're thinking. I think it's fair to say, I mean, obviously he's long gone now, but Steve Cooper wanted a left-sided centre-back and a winger in the January transfer window. Obviously the winger because of Abdul's injury, a left-sided centre-back because that was something they'd earmarked in the summer and hadn't been able to do. So, there is information that we get given. But also, you have to ask yourself as a journalist, why am I being told this? What are the reasons for this? Is there another way of standing this up? Is there somebody else I can speak to who might have a different perspective on that? That's those sort of things before you start publishing them. But no, we were aware of what areas of the squad Cooper wanted to sign, and to be fair, Ruud did say in the press conference, he didn't talk about certain positions very much, but he did let it slip a couple of times that you needed to strengthen because he's only got one right back. So straight away you hear that and you go, well, obviously they're looking for a right back. You use your common sense as well. And so, that we knew that there wouldn't be a massive amount of money, even though he said there would be some money. We knew there wouldn't be a massive amount of money because of what they spent in the summer. And that's why we all thought Tom Cannon sale and there was also a realignment of some of the shares and the finances behind the scenes. I think they opened up a new facility with McKeary as well. We thought, okay, perhaps they are going to spend a little bit of money in this window now. They've got the Cannon money coming in, but no, that wasn't enough for them to bring in the player they thought would have made a big difference and would have been worth that move.
Yeah, I mean, to many, the squad feels maybe even weaker than it was, at the start of the window. But I think for me, especially, I've spoken a lot about this on our channel, but, Tom Cannon is a proven championship striker, you could say. And there is a likelihood we will be in the championship next season. It's a little bit frustrating that Tom Cannon may be in the Premier League, you know what I mean? And we'll be in the
Yeah.
Championship. And that is very frustrating because, you know, who knows what Vardy will be here next season. But if not, you've got Daka. And that's
yeah, that I mean, but that's a really good example, really, of what I'm talking about. I mean, on one hand, you know, he scored a few goals in the Championship. He could have been a good fit to lead you if they get relegated again. But on the other hand, he's not really impacted the starting 11 last season or this season. He's been out on loan. He's now become an asset. They've made a profit on him. He wanted to go. Sheffield United came in for him and made him a very good offer. And Sunderland were in for him as well, but it was Sheffield United, I think, that was the front runners for a very long time. And he wanted to take up that challenge. And so the club did the deal.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Look, we've got another 6 months or 5 months until the next window opens. You know, there's kind of some people are thinking that we might not be able to do much business next summer if there's an embargo or something like that, Rob.
Well, yeah, that's the worry. If you get relegated, obviously there's going to have to be a clear out of players. I mean, would Jamie Vardy fancy another season in the Championship? He's 38 now. He's out of contract. Danny Ward and Danny Iverson are out of contract. I think that time's up for those two. You'd see Mads Hermansen would be sold if he got relegated. I imagine Bilal would be sold. Abdul Fattah would probably be, although his injury might mean that he stays for a little bit to get fit. There would have to be some sort of clear out of some of the dead wood that have. You can't keep bouncing up and down with the same squad because you're going to end up with the same result if you do get back up. So there's going to be a lot of wheeling dealing, and even if they stay up, there's got to be a lot of wheeling dealing. But obviously, you're in a strong position financially.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Right, everyone's aware of you, but if they're not, where people can find you to have a read of your stuff.
Yeah, for the last 5 years, been writing for The Athletic, owned by the New York Times. It's an app and website doing not just football. We do all sorts now. We do Formula One, tennis, and all sorts there. So it's a sports dedicated website, and it's basically the sport arm of the New York Times.
Lovely stuff. Thanks again, Rob. Thanks for joining me. I'm sure we'll speak again sometime in the near future. And yeah, if you have enjoyed the video, everybody make sure to hit like, make sure to hit subscribe, and go and check Rob out on The Athletic and on X. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.